There are no words that could possibly describe the pain, and I was just devastated, and I just wanted to be gone too. And I wish that it had been me instead of them. And we were there, I think, for 2.5 hours before anybody found us. You know, ultimately I was responsible for their children not being here anymore, and such a hard thing for all sides, you know.
Hi, my name's Teresa Clark, and in 2006 I was responsible for a tragic accident where 3 of my friends passed away. Yeah, so I was 27. It was V Festival in Staffordshire. We got there and everybody was super excited. Not proud of this, but I'd taken ecstasy before and driven, and knew, like, you know, had my boundaries with it, and was, you know, my ultimate thing was to keep everybody safe and wouldn't be out of control. So I think I did my first half when we, you know, maybe very soon after we got there. And I took my last half at about 8 o'clock at night, which we got everybody together and we said, you know, I would like to take another half. Like, what does everybody think about it? Yeah, nobody raised any concern. Everybody was, you know, happy, and we'd had sort of planned that somebody would sit in front of me, would stay awake. I think we left the festival at around 12:30, so there was quite a lot of time in between, and I felt okay to drive. And I think if I had been really impaired by the ecstasy, I wouldn't have made it 5 minutes down the road, and I just kind of, you know, carried on driving. I stopped once and everybody got out, everyone was kind of awake and had a coffee, and within 5-10 minutes of getting back into the car, everybody fell asleep. I started to feel quite tired, and I remember looking in the back at my 2 friends, and they didn't have their seatbelts on and they were all cuddled up together, and I thought to myself, I should tell them, I should wake them up and tell them to put their seatbelts on. And that's tortured me, really, ever since, because, you know, if only I'd done that, things might not have been as fatal as they were. I must have just, within a split second, just nodded off. The kind of reflex went that way, and then we just clipped a curb and doing 60 miles an hour, something like that. And unfortunately, my friends in the back, where they weren't wearing their seatbelts, the force, they were asleep. They were, you know, thrown out of the car. And as we rolled down the bank, a 6x4 fence post came into the car, and it impaled me through the right groin. It went right through my leg and out of my bottom, and one in another leg. And my friend who was in the passenger seat was also received injuries from the fence. There was a point where the impact, I was knocked unconscious, but then as the car stopped, I was awake through all of it, and we were all trapped. And I didn't know at the time that the wood was actually in my leg and had gone right through my leg and out of the other side into the seat, and was actually what was keeping me in place. I noticed that my little finger had been completely severed. I'd also dislocated my right shoulder, so that was like hanging in my face. So I was like trying to hold myself up. I mean, I couldn't touch my friend, but it was just so horrendous being next to him and not being able to touch him or see if he was okay. And we were there, I think, for 2.5 hours before anybody found us. And when the emergency services came, I told them that I didn't want them to touch me. I wanted them to make sure that everybody was okay. I was given, I don't know whether it was ketamine or something at the scene, but I died. I had an out-of-body experience where I saw what was happening around me, and this sense of like peace was just so strange to even explain. And then I came to in the ambulance, and I just screamed. There are no words that could possibly describe
the pain and there just aren't any words. Just heartbroken. And I kept trying to tell myself that they were okay. I think I was just trying to my mind went into this place where I was like trying to sort of protect it. But I knew in my heart that they were gone. And I was just devastated. And I just wanted to be gone too. And I wish that it had been me instead of them. And if I could change anything, I wouldn't even think about it. And it's just such an awful, tragic thing to happen. And then after that was a blur for quite some time. I know that they had several surgeons trying to save my legs for about 3 days after that. I lost 6.5 pints of blood. And it was just like an awful nightmare. Nobody told me that they had passed away for about a week, but that my friends told me. And they were just so supportive, and they're just such, kind, beautiful souls, and they knew that it was just an accident, and that they knew who I was, and that, there was never any intent, or it was just an awful accident that happened that we were all part of, All I could do was just promise in my heart that I would try to live my life for them, and that I'd been given a second chance, and that I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to make sure that I did something good, made them proud. And that's been my guiding light ever since. And it's been really hard. There were times when I was so crippled by my mental health, and just the weight of carrying that. I knew I would go to prison. I wanted to go to prison. I know that sounds really weird, but I really just wanted justice for the families. I pled guilty. So I was given a 4-year sentence and disqualified from driving, or if I was going to drive again, I had to take an advanced driving test. I actually made a vow in sentencing when my barrister read out a letter from me to say that I would never drive again, and I won't, and I haven't. I served half of my sentence. I served 2 years in prison and 2 years on probation, back in the community. And prison was obviously very scary, and I was obviously very afraid and felt very vulnerable, especially because due to my sort of mental capacity at the time, I was diagnosed with severe PTSD, I had anxiety and depression, I had suicidal thoughts every day, but I knew I could never take that way out. I just couldn't do it. I was actually very grateful for the women that I was put into a cell with. They were actually very supportive. They just sort of took me under their wing a little bit and kind of helped me to process my grief. And when I was there, I started to train to become a Samaritan. And so I felt like I had a purpose, like I could, really empathise with other people struggling, and that, making good on that promise that I made to my friends, that I was trying to channel it into something positive. I volunteered for the Samaritans for 1.5 years when I was in prison, and then I started to volunteer for a charity, an amazing charity based in South London called Certitude. At the time when I was there, they had a project called Beyond Prison, which was supporting offenders with mental health conditions to rehabilitate and kind of, transition back into society. And my boss at the time, I think he saw something in me and asked me to apply for this job, and I'm just so grateful that he did, because that job was my lifeline. And I think without that, I probably wouldn't be here today. I would have gone down a very different road. It was a really difficult time, but my work gave me a sense of purpose, and I live with it every day. Even though I obviously try to do good, it still weighs a lot on me, and it always will.
I mean, my family were just incredible. They really were. They were by my side throughout, and it was really, really difficult. And, you know, even with like taking ecstasy, you know, my mum and dad like are very anti-drugs and didn't, you know that that was a part of like my lifestyle. And, you know, it was so difficult telling them. My friends who survived, they were kind of like the go-betweens between the families, and they relayed kind of messages from me, and yeah, I wrote them letters, and it was just so difficult, you know, because everybody deals with it in different ways. And, you know, ultimately I was responsible for their children not being here anymore, and such a hard thing for all sides, you know. Just did my best to try to convey my remorse and how much I was thinking of them. And sadly, we lost touch, and I think it just became very difficult for us all to kind of move on with our lives. Like, I think, you know, we all felt so much guilt. There came a point when, you know, I think we just weren't able to kind of like heal ourselves without kind of separating, and I still, you know, love them both endlessly and only want the best for them, but I feel like it was something that kind of we almost had to do just to kind of survive, you know. Seeing me or even having any contact with me is just a reminder of like what happened, and that I'm the cause of it. The impact of like that one decision, that one bad decision, or, you know, irresponsible choice that at the time you just don't think that, you know, oh, it's not going to happen to me, or, you know, you're just, I think, you know, being young as well, like sometimes we just don't have a concept of, you know, how decisions and choices have consequences and impacts, and we aren't able to kind of see the bigger picture. And, you know, I think that's one thing now when I share my story that I really hope that hits home with, especially young people. You know, you might think that you're having fun and, you know, it's not going to happen to you, but it could well happen to you, and it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it.